It all started about 65 million years ago. A meteorite appeared and wiped out the dinosaur kingdom. Blackout. Under the impact of the meteorite, the air was filled with small particles of dust, and the Earth, deprived from the heat of the sun, was cooled down instantaneously. It was the beginning of a long glacial period and the end of the giant reptiles. Ice and dust covered the bodies of the largest creatures ever known to Earth. At the foot of a pine tree, a pond overtaken by ice is home to a small but voracious predator who outlived the rest, the water beetle. The cold water slowed down his metabolism. His vital functions are reduced to a minimum, and immobile, he is forced to live off the oxygen reserves in his abdomen. Gradually, oxygen gives place to carbon dioxide. He must replace his oxygen reserves by trying to find, under the ice, an air bubble. Thanks to this incredible system of hibernation, water beetles survive the glacial period and the long wait for spring. To this day, they wait in exactly the same way. The ice melts slowly away, gradually bringing the pond out into the open. This particular one is a male, easily recognizable by the circular suckers on his front legs. His abrupt movements under the ice are noticed by a nearby female wearing a scored shell. Being male or female, the fight is equal. They must replace their poisoned air with pure air. Thus begins a contemporary story with insects for actors, whose ancestors date back to prehistoric times, the era of the dinosaurs. This pond where the water beetles couple is situated in France, close to the town of Troyes. February. The ice has melted away, evaporating into the air, and the excess humidity is shown by the sheet of mist covering the surface of the water. The sun's rays barely penetrate the water's depth due to this natural barrier. In this opaque world, the water beetles rarely use their eyes. Their antennae act as a blind man's stick, guiding them around through the murky waters. As the water warms up, the beetles become more active, especially the female. Her eggs were fertilized last summer, and she has kept them throughout the winter. She waits for the warmth before laying. By means of her adapted oviposa, she lays her eggs on stalks of water iris. We will never know why she chooses one stork to another, but in less than 2 weeks, she will have laid around 30 eggs. Once anchored to the stalks, the eggs receive their air through photosynthesis of the host plant, but with little sunlight entering the pond, photosynthesis is limited, thus slowing down their development. The coming warm weather will soon clear away the mist, bringing back their natural speed of growth. Finally, the mist dissolves into the air, bringing to light the open pond. The moist ground around this releases odors of damp and humus into the air. The alluring smells attract other creatures related to the dinosaur out of their long, hibernating holes. After 6 months of slumber, the red frog has one thing in mind: to have a good bath. The chosen pool is the pine tree pond. Awakened from his slumber by the frog's motions, another creature from prehistoric times shows face: the newt. He also thinks it would be a good idea to refresh his thoughts and take a little dip. The sun's rays heat the pond at full blow. The temperature of the water keeps rising. Good news for the water beetles, whose metabolism works something like a motor. It needs warming up before functioning properly. Until the motor is properly heated and all the vital functions working, the water beetle can't even catch a young salamander. Whoops, missed it this time. Not for long, though. The male water beetle is going to let off some steam on his partner, who is just as apathetic. This time, it's not to overcome his hunger, but to satisfy an urging sexual desire. What seems like a savage attack is nothing but foreplay before breeding. He holds onto his partner by means of his suckers. The female, afraid of dying asphyxiated, avoids any excess movement which could cost her oxygen reserves. For over 3 hours, the male grips his drowsy partner. Once having accomplished his duty as a male, he will place a jelly-like stopper into the opening of the female, preventing further impregnation from other males and to ensure gene purity. The female will carry this chastity belt for approximately 2 weeks. Not far off, a male newt is aroused by this frenzy of lovemaking and has started his own preparations. In a cream jacket with black spots, he must impress his lady. Their eyes meet, and all is clear. It's time for some acrobatics. Oh, she looks more upset than impressed. Unfortunately, she remains insensitive to the most explicit gestures. No question about it. She's bored, so off she goes. A newt in love never gives up, he insists. Until there is no point in going on. March. Nature's rhythms mingle with rain and sun. Under the surface of the water beetle's eggs start showing signs of life. Their movements attract an opportunist mollusk, the marsh limnae. An uncovered egg is a delicacy not to be missed. The marsh limnaes are equipped with lungs and need to come up to the surface of the water to replenish their air supply. They hold their breath whilst trapezing along the iris stalks in search of an easy catch. More often than not, the marsh limnae has to rush up for air before having finished her meal. The punctured eggs she abandons are soon taken over by bacteria. A corpse, water, and sunlight, an attractive home place for spirillum, who colonize this raw meat. Eggs which survive predation from both the marsh limnae and bacteria will soon be able to hatch. Instinctively after hatching, the young larvae swim to the surface to breathe. They're equipped with a pair of small flaps which have a double role, the exchange of gas and to keep them floating on the surface of the water. To our eyes, these creatures look antisocial and quite frankly hideous. But of what use are our beauty criteria to this microcosmos world? These translucid creatures will have to overcome many an obstacle to survive their first days, which is more than cause for admiration. This one is the first one to see daylight. Let's call her number 1. Shortly after, number 2 tries to hatch. Since the laying of the eggs, the stalk has slowly deformed in shape. Oh, number 2 is in trouble. Its legs and claws are stuck. She's not the only one. Number 4 and 5 cannot get themselves free either. They are stuck at the abdomen. With a tremendous effort, number 2 manages to free its legs. Numbers 4 and 5 are struggling to do the same. Number 4 still has a long way to go, whilst number 2 is trying to free its claws. Let's summarize the situation. Number 5 is stuck at the level of its abdomen, as is number 4. Number 2 is stuck by its claws. Night falls. Numbers 2, 4 and 5 still fight to set themselves free. In the moonlight, number 3 hatches. At dawn, number 2 is still stuck by its claws. Number 4 is partially free. And number 5 is still asleep. While number 2 takes a break, number 4 gives it her last shot. Exhausted by such an effort, number 4 hasn't got the energy to swim to the surface. She lands on a water louse, who takes her to her destination. Motivated by number 4's success, number 2 tries even harder. All in vain, she dies through asphyxiation. On the other hand, number 5 kept at it patiently, which obviously did the trick. The cleaning up squad comes into action. Bloodworms. These tireless dustbin creatures in red uniforms are at the base of the tropical food chain. They transform organic debris into energy. These two here are trying to free an egg stuck in the filaments of the iris stalk. They are joined by another helper, a mollusk equipped with lungs, the ram's horn snail. Now fortunately, he's a vegetarian. Thanks to the group sweeping up, the future number 6 will be able to hatch with no problem. Out of the 30 eggs laid, only 10 will hatch. We will follow the development of 5 ordinary larvae, number 1, number 3, number 4, number 5 and number 6. Now during this time, our male water beetle has lost track of his partner. She's definitely out of sight. He can't control himself any longer. With no female interested in him, he liberates his sperm into the water alone. Well, more work for the little red cleaners. Left to eat all day long, the bloodworms have proliferated. The pond bed has become a ghetto, where each one claims vital space. On the verge of this territory, number 4 has found a prey. She has detected the vibrations of a solitary bloodworm. Face to face with its predator, the bloodworm has only one choice: to bury itself in the mud. The larvae is able to detect the twisting and turning of the bloodworm so as to precisely detect its position. This one has no way of burying itself under a pile of pebble. To catch her first prey, number 4 must learn how to use her weapons, her claws. It's just a question of practice. Number 4 has just discovered that her claws are not enough to immobilize the victim, but that it also has a chemical weapon at its disposal. A violent poison which kills the prey by digesting it from the inside out. When the poison has done its work, the predator just needs to suck up the juice. Drawn by the sucking and chewing noises, an aquatic monster makes his appearance. We'll call him the Green Giant for the moment and watch what's going to happen. A pond, like a jungle, abides by the survival of the fittest rule. Number 4 has just paid the price. In the meantime, the 4 other larvae are having a feast. Bloodworm after bloodworm, they are insatiably eating until they stop through exhaustion. Sometimes they're forced to stop for a pause. Number 1 detects some strange vibrations coming from below. It is a newt. Great eaters of plump bloodworm, they do not like to share their feast. The tragic fate of number 4 seems to have taught his sisters a lesson. Never fight anyone bigger than yourself. That's the golden rule. It's better to run away than to take useless risks. Like the water beetle, the newt detects its prey as soon as it moves. His eyes, bulging as they are poor of sight. They are there for another reason. Newts haven't a tongue and have problems swallowing. This is where their eyes come into use. When the newt closes its eyes, these fall back into their sockets in the back of the head, thus projecting the food into their boneless mouths, down into their stomachs. Better one than none is a newt's motto. Insatiable eaters, they will soon finish off the stock of bloodworm available. Fortunately, there will be soon new arrivals. A red frog is laid in the shadow of the pine tree, close to 10,000 eggs, if not more. Each egg will produce a larvae of not more than 1 millimeter long. End of March. Springtime has arrived, and the flowers show all their colours to attract the pollen collectors. The pine tree pond has gone down in water level. A race against the clock is set for the water beetle larvae. Number 6 is 8 days old. Having indulged in bloodworm over the last days, she can barely fit into her shell. If all goes well, it will take her 1 hour to get rid of this tight corset. Under peril of dying asphyxiated, everything should run smoothly since it is all done underwater, without breathing. Number 6 will be the first to leave the cloakroom with a new outfit. The other 4 larvae will shed their cloaks simultaneously. The remains float aimlessly at the surface of the water. The larvae are now at the second stage of their life cycle. The bloodworms have become scarce. The fight for food increases. There is only room for one survivor. It's a state of war. Oof, number 5 has been bitten by number 3. She tries to get rid of the poison injected into her abdomen. Overtaken by her urge to get rid of the poison, number 5 has forgotten to keep guard. Number 3 comes back for more. larvae is attracted by the attack. It is number 6, starving like the rest. In order to survive, they have to kill, even if it means killing one of their own. It is of no importance. The sacrifice of number 5 means that the rest of the larvae may be saved from starvation. The assaulting larvae each in turn inject their poison, their digestive enzymes. As with the bloodworm, the enzyme liquefies the victim. The two attackers suck up this pre-digested soup. In a couple of hours, all the accumulated energy which number 5 had in 10 days has passed on to number 3 and number 6. By practicing acts of cannibalism, the water beetle larvae are ensured of having at close food reserves which they can digest totally. Hidden below the roots, the father of these larvae watches its siblings kill each other. Is this the beginning of the end? Just looking around the pond, he assures himself. Without a doubt, all the larvae have molted and are strong enough to impose their own laws. From now on, they reign over the Pine Tree Pond Kingdom. The countdown begins. The first one to reach adulthood is the winner. The male water beetle is no longer master of the pond. His siblings now attack one of the last possible meals, tadpoles. Tadpoles don't make it easy either. Number 6 will have to hunt down her prey, but she's not the only one after a meal. The green giant has also got his eye on it. Too slow, green giant. Furthermore, on top of her twig, number 6 had prepared her attack well. After having eaten half of number 5 and a whole tadpole, number 6 is in a strong position to win. Her belly filled to the full, she will be able to go through to the third phase of her development. There's still time, but the water is evaporating quickly. A few inches separate the surface from the bottom of the pond. From the bottom, number 6 comes to the surface for his last gasp of air before going back down to molt. The molting goes on and on. For number 6, it's just routine. Even if she loses a bit of her poison under the effort of getting rid of her shell, it only takes her 10 minutes to complete her underwater striptease. Just below the surface, number 3 prepares herself to undergo the change. That is, if aggressive number 1 allows her to. Having been left out of the feast over number 5, number 1 is hungry and obviously ready to catch up on lost weight. Disturbed in her molting, number 3 can't even get her head out of her old skin. Unbelievably, something incredible is going to happen. To understand, watch closely the colour change in the larvae's body. Instant death. Number 3 poisoned herself. Number 6 is the only one to reach phase 3. She is now the invincible. What can number 1 do against such a power? Remember the golden rule, never put up a front against someone stronger than yourself. A memory slip could be fatal. May. The heat grows and the evaporation accelerates. The dew rapidly disappears into thin air. The pond and its inhabitants are threatened. There's barely any water left. In the few inches still left, a miracle. A bloodworm has survived. His destiny is quite uncertain. Number 6 recognizes these movements. The vibrations betray the bloodworm's hideout, but this time number 6 is not alone. Facing him, the green giant is still around. A duel is inevitable, even if it's over a tiny bloodworm. Number 6 tries to go around her rival to try to reach the bloodworm before him. The vibrations are closer. The green giant quickly moves into place. The two rivals are the same size and equal in power. Number 6 doesn't make the first move. Instead, she abandons the prey and territory to the winner. The green giant managed to replenish its reserves just in time before the pond dries out. Coming out of the water, he will reveal to us his real identity. The green giant was no more and no less than the larvae of a dragonfly. Now everyone can breathe in the pond. Pest will fly away. Number 6 also abandons the ship. She is the last survivor. She searches for a crevice in the earth to dig her chamber. Out of sight of predators and from sunlight, she will go into her next phase, that of a nymph. After 1 month of fasting, this nymph must still hold tight for another couple of weeks for the colour of its wings. During which time the pond has completely dried up. Number 6 leaves her hideout. It is a female. Weakened by her latest experiences, she has yet another hurdle to get past. There is no water left. Number 6 is not used to dry environments. There is only one way out. Fly away and look for another pond. Now, as we've said before, the water beetle is short-sighted and colourblind. Due to this, collision is always a risk. She searches for reflections, which normally means water. The first pond will do. Now this pond is covered in duckweed, usual in stagnant waters, as well as having some strange inhabitants. Who are these funny-faced creatures? Tadpoles, who've reached their final development stage. Face to face with frogs, the golden rule is still applicable. Better not insist in confrontation and find somewhere else to play, deeper below. In this pond, the bloodworms are not the usually slow, lazy larvae who wander the pond bed. They now go up to the surface by means of a new technique. They have weird-shaped flaps. We will find out their function later. The order of events is chronological. First, the bloodworm goes up to the surface covered in duckweed. It uses its flaps to keep him afloat at the surface. Then, the red uniformed dustbin men are close relatives to the mosquito. 2 months have gone by, and number 6 still hasn't eaten. To make matters worse, she is going to be the aim of many a predator coming for the skies. The waders. Not around during the dinosaur dynasty, these enemies are today known as the egret, the heron, and the spoonbill. For a water beetle, it's better to be out of the way of these modern exterminators. Well, luckily for number 6, these waders prefer soft-shell larvae. Nevertheless, it is the end of summer and she still has had nothing to eat. One way to forget one's hunger is to take one long last gasp and hibernate. Once woken in springtime, the queen of the pine tree pond will be able to pass on her priceless experience to her descendants. Survive at all costs. Meanwhile, she's probably dreaming of a world populated by millions of ready-to-eat prey, where green giants fly away every day.
almost nothing. Nothing other than Thoth. Now, Thoth was a god who was terrified of loneliness and the dark. So he decided to create light. Then, like every self-respecting but bored god, Thoth invented a world of mortals. He created Earth. On this Earth, he implanted the first living creatures, trees. He gave them a vast, fertile Garden of Eden, the plains of the Masai Mara in East Africa. Here, on this earthly paradise, the trees multiplied. Acacias, cumbis, redwithes and balsams soon formed a uniform green belt. All these trees grew up together, side by side, with one exception, a solitary fig tree. This one took root near the Talek River, which flowed at Thoth's will. It was a tree without equal in majesty and could be seen from afar. The biggest tree in the Masai Mara, it had a trunk 6 meters in circumference to support the weight of several tons of branches. And, like every fig tree in the Masai Mara, it had its own fruit-bearing cycle. But very quickly, Thoth grew tired of admiring his plantations. Their stillness bored him, so he created animals. The animals had the ability to move about, much more entertaining, and Thoth even hit on the idea of giving the animals the still plants to feed on. That way, everything was taken care of. Or so Thoth thought. But he'd forgotten about a certain animal, covered in hair from head to toe, except for its hands and muzzle. There's no doubt about it. It was an animal Thoth had created in his own image. A monkey, the Anubis baboon, the being Thoth wanted to be perfect, but its creation was quite an adventure. Thoth's first baboon creation was a 20-year-old male. Let's call him Alpha. Convinced that, like himself, his creation was terrified of being alone, Thoth immediately provided him with not one, but several females. 70 centimeters tall and weighing 30 kilograms, Alpha is twice as imposing as his companions. However, his physique doesn't mean that he's the patriarch. In fact, it's the females and their offspring who form the tribe's nucleus. The males protect and fertilize the females at the females' disposition. And so it was, as Thoth willed. But the females aren't exclusively for Alpha. He has to share them. And these two, 6-year-old Homos and 8-year-old Molos, want a piece of the action. They're already looking for a place in the adult male hierarchy, which spells trouble for baboon politics. But we'll come to that later. For now, Thoth must spend 1 or 2 of his divine days teaching his cherished creatures the art of living. He gives them a tree as their chief habitat. Not just any old tree, but the Masai Mara's giant fig tree. It's a place where they can meet, sleep, and use as a lookout post. The baboons like their tree so much that they're only driven from it by hunger. In the morning, the first to start feeling peckish gives the signal, and the others follow. As soon as the canopies tenants have left, the occupants of the 2 lower levels appear. First are the ants. They feed on the dead bark. The lizard comes out to reheat his cold blood in the morning sun. Further down, a rat lives in the fig tree's root labyrinth. Meanwhile, the baboons are on the move along the riverbed. It has almost dried up, but its banks are a precious store, providing bulbs, roots and tubers, the baboons' main food source. The adults stuff themselves while the young play, knowing that after their mothers have eaten, well, it will be their turn. Reed buck have impressive antlers which are particularly effective for chasing unwelcome visitors, but there's no danger for the baboons. Thoth wanted the Masai Mara to be a permanent oasis, and so it was. The still plants are in sufficient number and variety for the region's inhabitants to have their fill almost all the year round. There's no feeding competition either between the monkeys and this bird, the saddle-bill stork or jabiru. In fact, the baboons live in harmony with all the vegetarians of the Masai Mara, even the elephants. The baboons' search for food takes them to the opposite riverbank, far from the fig tree. They wander about the vast marshy plains, the feeding place of all sorts of other herbivores. For pulling up grass and unearthing bulbs, the baboons have a number of techniques that they can use simultaneously: the fingers, especially the thumb, the fingernails, teeth, and lips. The young acquire this know-how by mimicking the adults. The baboons take their time eating, so much so that they've spent 6 hours of their first day of existence feeding, and it will always be so. At the end of the afternoon, Alpha gives the signal to leave, the feast is over, and it's back to the fig tree for the troop. Thoth doesn't lose any time himself in falling into a blissful sleep, safe in the knowledge that he has created the perfect world. On Earth, too, it's time for bed. Darkness falls and all the members of Alpha's troop are settled in for the night. Each one chooses a branch and a comfortable spot. Baboons sleep for about 8 hours a night in 2-hour cycles. Just as well, because like Thoth, they are terrified of darkness and have very poor night vision. While most of the troop sleep, a few females who are suckling stay on guard. Up until now, everything is going well for the baboons. But one fine morning, Thoth woke up with a furious craving for figs. Bursting with goodness, the fruit of the most beautiful tree in the Masai Mara is at last ripe. Thoth has been jealously guarding these figs for a long time, and they are forbidden to all mortals. To ensure his wishes are respected, Thoth has dispatched an emissary to Earth. The divine guardian is the same colour as the forbidden fruits. His name is Green Mamba. A camouflage ace with mortal venom. In some, he's a dissuasive character. Thoth knows Green Mamba's operating instructions. Leave to heat for several minutes in the morning sun. When its cold blood has attained ambient temperature, it's capable of detecting any suspect movements. And just a few minutes later, its forked tongue can capture odours floating in the air. This is how you obtain a green mamba fit to kill outright any fig-loving baboons. The baboons are not aware of Thoth's plans, but they're instinctively mistrustful of all animals who don't enter the category eater of still plants. Still, they just can't resist the temptation of the ripe figs, so they try to distance themselves from this strange animal who tries to pass himself off as a vegetable. The youngest don't know how to get rid of the slithery killjoy. But Alpha has developed a safe and efficient method. Once the serpent has been forgotten, Alpha can enjoy the forbidden fruits in peace. But what is written is written. Alpha should have known not to mess with divine injunctions, but the temptation was too much. All those juicy figs. And now the whole troop has started stuffing itself. No holds barred. Celestial fury descends progressively upon Earth. For each fig plucked, eaten, or spoilt, the anger of Thoth gathers force over the savannah. Frightened by the menacing sky, the youngest leave the extremities of the branches and take refuge near the trunk. But Alpha isn't intimidated, and he carries on eating regardless, provoking Thoth to open the gates of the heavens. Torrential rain begins to pour on the Masai Mara. It will continue every day at dusk for 2 months, because it was Thoth, after all, who invented the calendar and the seasons. The first season is the short, rainy season. It has been raining throughout November and December. The Talek River has filled its bed, cutting the plains in two and making life difficult for the baboons. The baboons were accustomed to crossing the river on foot in search of food, and now they'll have to find another way across. Once again, Alpha's experience should help them to find a solution to the problem. In fact, the clouds of Thoth's anger had a silver lining, as the rains have brought tender shoots up from the fertile soil. There's no need anymore to travel far and wide to find food, and the young baboons profit from their extra leisure time to invent a new game. The whole savannah enjoys the results of Thoth's outburst. As the baboons explored their renewed pastures, they distanced themselves from their habitual fig tree neighbourhood. And a solitary elephant makes the most of their absence to gather some burgeoning green branches. Nearby, all sorts of herbivores savour the tender new grass. And not far away, some termites are also making the most of the changes to their environment. The rain showers have broken up the soil, enabling them to build their earthen cathedrals. The savannah's profile will soon take on a new form when the work of these labourers is completed in a few days' time. The rains have stopped, and the humid heat begins to reduce the river flow. It becomes almost stagnant. The rat, the fig tree's garden tenant, has been waiting for this moment for a long time. The tiny water droplets suspended in the air transport tempting odours. There's definitely a smell of nuts, but there's a meaty smell too, and his nose doesn't let him down. It was exactly what he was hoping for, a xylophage beetle larva. The dead wood that these larvae have been consuming gives off the nutty odour. With its cutting incisors and rasping molars, the rat's teeth are perfectly adapted for its omnivorous diet. Once it's been crushed, the larva will be gulped down in a few minutes. The rat appears to be very hygienic, but there's more to it than that. It has to get rid of the nut smell trapped in its fur before it can sniff out more prey. The tempting nut odour also reaches Alpha and his troops' nostrils. The baboons have returned to the vicinity of their fig tree. The dead acacia branches have been softened by the rain, allowing xylophage larvae to dig new tunnels. The smell of this still plant is enough to give a vegetarian mobile animal a taste for carnivorous things. Alpha exercises his right of precedence. Then the young follow, imitating him in their own manner. But hierarchy obliges them to give up their place when another adult comes along. All this place swapping is rather disturbing for the other branch occupants, the ants. They had made their latest home here, but the news gets round quickly that it's time for immediate removal. The scouts get their information from their antennae, and they're insistent. There are no other emergency exit tunnels within the branch, so the move has to be made by the exterior, under guard of the soldiers. Oh, and bypassing, if possible, the hairy, non-identified objects. Unlike figs, larvae are not forbidden food, so what has brought the green mamba to the neighbourhood? Well, it's not the baboons, but a potential prey, a lizard. Faced with this elite killing machine, the only chance the lizard has of escaping is to camouflage himself in the grass. The trick has smothered his tracks. Confused, the serpent doesn't know which way to look. And watch carefully, because there's about to be an incredible reversal in this situation. snake is slowly asphyxiated. Thoth is furious. He's just lost his most precious secret agent. He orders a great rainy season, a downpour without precedent. When the celestial gates close again, all the baboons can do is observe the extent of the damage. Water has invaded everything. The Talek River has spilt over its banks onto the neighbouring plains, and as the ground is already saturated, the overflowing water ends up back in the river. In these conditions, it's not even worth looking for a crossing. Some strange mobile creatures have appeared since the flood, and they don't seem at all vegetarian. To get across to the other side, the only solution is a huge leap. Following Alpha's lead, the whole troop makes the leap, while risking a fall, which could end them up in the crocodile's jaws. The problem with jumps from a high to a low point is that backtracking becomes impossible. The rains have transformed the Talek River into an insurmountable barrier, and Alpha and his troop must start on a quest for a new tree. Unfortunately, the baboons can't always choose where they'll land. The acacia tree, full of thorns, leaves very bad memories. Some of the females must have been impressed by Alpha's acrobatics. Swollen, pink hindquarters and languorous looks mean they're on heat, and they don't hide their interest in the adult males. Alpha has already given in to this one's advances, to another female's great displeasure. Coupling is brief but frequent in baboons. Did you say lust? One day, Thoth decided to play a trick on his creatures. He sent his collection of ticks to Earth. Passed on from one baboon to the next, the blood-sucking parasites soon spread through the whole troop. Even by scratching conscientiously, it's impossible to get rid of them. The baboons have to help each other out. Gradually, mutual tick removal becomes inscribed as an important ritual in baboon social relationships. Often the highest placed in the hierarchy are groomed by the lower ranking, like Alpha here, who's enjoying the attentions of one of his companions. The females obviously take pleasure in grooming their young, and each other. It seems the troop knows how to turn all Thoth's tricks to their own advantage. Now that they've made the jump and found themselves on the other side of the river, the baboons have to find a tree to spend the night in. Back at the fig tree, intense activity is going on in the troop's absence. A colony of safari ants has set up a bivouac in a waterlogged soil at the foot of the tree. The army is on campaign and preparing a ruthless raid. The first find, an excrement dating from the solitary elephant's last visit. Not very interesting at a first glance, but the question has to be more deeply explored. The safari ants know that underneath the droppings, other underground specialists are drilling tunnels to supply their nests. Gangs of safari ants attack the termites. The termite corpses are deposited in a designated place. Once all the tunnels have been cleaned out, the ants gather together again in cohort formation to bring the spoils back to the bivouac. We know that ants can carry material up to 4 times their own weight, but the safaris look as if they're trying to beat the record. Perhaps it's military ardour which excites them. A few kilometres away, on the bank of the Tarlik, Alpha's troop is still looking for a new tree. In their search, they come across the creatures who invaded the river. From the looks of their teeth and their powerful bodies, they definitely aren't still plant eaters. Alpha decides to move away from these croc-infested waters and begin prospecting in the forest instead. In the underwood, the baboons meet a herd of impalas. These vulnerable animals are often found in the company of warthogs, whose intense aggression comes between the impalas and lurking predators. Like this hyena, for example. The warthogs stop grazing the still plants to form a dissuasive barrier and send the hyena back where it came from. Simple and efficient. Perhaps because of this, Alpha himself feels safe in this clearing. He just has to find a tree. All the trees look the same, and none of them is big enough to host 40 baboons. For once, the troop won't be able to sleep together tonight. They'll have to split up. For safety reasons, the youngest gather round Alpha, where they can play without danger and come to an agreement as to who's sleeping where in the new dormitory. Each one eventually finds a place, but before falling asleep, Alpha and the other adult males locate each other's positions in the canopy. In the darkness of the night, they stay in vocal contact. The next day, an early riser wakes up his sleeping companions and persuades them to get down from their tree. But what can they do in the early morning fog except wait for the others to wake up? The last up seem to be anxious to explore. On the whole, Alpha's troop seems to be getting along well. Up until now, they've found a way of resolving their problems, got round difficulties, and bypassed risks. How about a peaceful life now? No such luck. Thoth is still sore and dissatisfied with the rains, floods, and ticks. He decides to sow discord in the savannah. If there's a fight spoiling, Homos is always around. Facing him is his elder brother, Molos, and Molos is thirsty for power. His intimidating behavior gives away his ambition to usurp Alpha. Alpha doesn't want to get involved, but he watches the family squabbles carefully. To avoid fighting, Alpha craftily holds a youngster next to him, for the little one's protection, but also as a shield. Molos makes the first charge, but is not very insistent. Baboons prefer to use dissuasive force before coming to blows. Homos dodges the attack, and now it's his turn to provoke Alpha. But Alpha remains neutral. Molos, however, still needs to vent his aggression, so he turns on his brother. Homos knows he's not going to win this battle against his older and heavier brother. Instead, he suggests forming an alliance with him against other members of the troop. It's agreed. But the other baboons prefer to flee from these two troublemakers. All that's left for them to do is to try to challenge Alpha again. He still hasn't moved. They'd really like a good old scrap, but Alpha has seen it all before. Molos can raise his eyebrows, Homos bare his teeth. Their provocations leave him cold. In frustration, Molos sets out again after Homos. Mollos wins in a victory of strength over cunning. Hommus took a nasty fall from the top of the tree, and the only thing he can do now is to count his battle wounds. A damaged wrist. No question of taking part in a coalition against the youngest now. And with his left cheek pouch ripped, it's going to be a while before he can chew normally. They're only superficial injuries and don't put his life in danger. However, as he lost the fight, he can no longer oust Mollos. From now on, he'll have to submit to his brother's authority. There's no doubt about it from the way Mollos is showing off. He's decided to make the most of his superiority. But there's a law in baboon society that will bring him down a peg or two. The lower members in the hierarchy must present their hindquarters to the highest place to be, shall we say, inspected. It's somewhat humiliating. With all that's been happening, the troop hasn't had a single meal. So it's time for Alpha to move them along and lead them to a feeding ground. Contrary to habit, as if he had a premonition, Alpha decides to leave the youngest in the clearing near their tree and set off ahead as a scout. The troop of young mothers walks through the plains under the orders of their first lady. Alpha is reassured. He knows that these eaters of still plants mean no harm. The troop can come and feed here. But where are they? They ought to be at the edge of the wood, waiting for a signal from him. Well, there must have been some sort of misunderstanding, because on the other side, the troop appear to be waiting for him to come and get them. Eventually, it's Mollos who takes the initiative to lead the troop to the meadow. Alpha seems to know that Mollos won't be long in ousting him. But for the time being, the young and the females aren't willing to change their habits. They catch up with Alpha for their daily feast. Even with his experience, there are some things which leave Alpha perplexed, such as Mollos's behaviour. For several days now, he seems to have had one thing in mind, getting to the top of the social ladder, and yet here he is, presenting his hindquarters to show his submission. Suspicious, Alpha refuses to get involved in Mollos's tricks. And the message is clear. When a baboon turns his back on you, it's because he doesn't want anything to do with you. Politics is complicated among Thoth's creatures. The borders are often blurred between dominant and dominated. In young males, the desire to gain power is often stronger than anything. Molus has conquered Alpha, a victory of brutality over wisdom. Molus is delighted to have finally achieved his goal, and to make sure everyone knows he's in charge now, he doesn't hesitate to terrorize the other members of the troop. The other adults attempt to form timid alliances to confront him. Only faced with such pointed arguments, it's difficult to remain resolved. Molus feels perfectly comfortable with his status of great adult male. In fact, he's already dreaming about the privileges reserved for those of his position. And he doesn't have anything to fear, as he appears to be about the only worthy candidate. The others are not a pretty sight. Homer still has a hole in his cheek. Alpha is rather the worst for wear. And even this complete nobody has been a victim of the despot. August. It hasn't rained for 2 months. Thoth has been sticking scrupulously to his calendar. It's the long, dry season. The herbivores have no other pastures than these yellow fields. In their outings on the plain, the baboons meet a proficient hunter, the cheetah. The cheetah rarely approaches zebras because they have an annoying habit of defending themselves with their hooves. This is perhaps why the baboons don't stray far from them. The cheetah's principal victims are Thompson's gazelles, and this female and her 3 sons already have their eye on them. The mother hunts alone for her hungry youngsters. By approaching upwind, she's sure not to alert the gazelles, who have a very fine sense of smell. The rest is merely a question of speed, and we already know that the cheetah is a world champion in this discipline. very low-cut nostrils enable the cheetah to catch her breath while she asphyxiates her prey. It's dinner time for the 3 young cheetahs, provided they manage to find their mother in the tall grass. Well, well, it's the baboons, with Mollis leading the way to the scene of the crime. The first on the spot are the cheetahs, but Mollis, still as aggressive, seems to have decided to argue over their spoils. It's a rare sight in the savannah, a handful of baboons trying to scare off 4 cheetahs. However, the cheetahs don't seem quite ready to give up their turf, and in spite of repeated baboon attacks, they resist. The fight equals out, but in bungling confusion. In the end, Mollis's determination wins over the whole troop, and confronted by such unanimity, the felines capitulate. In the confusion, the gazelle has been dissected and dispersed all over the place. The baboons will have to glean the pieces of flesh from here and there. Mollis has awarded himself the lion's share, the gazelle's belly. The others will have to make do with the legs. Baboons are also carnivorous and don't miss an occasion to eat meat, so long as they don't have to hunt for it, of course. So much for the harmony that Thoth willed. Because, meanwhile, some animals have been left out. The young and the female baboons still haven't had their share, and neither have the cheetahs. They're going to try their luck a little further away. Without rain, the still plant-eaters have literally shorn the plains. Mollis and his group decide they've had enough of their exile. The Talek River has returned to its bed. The baboons can now cross it and reach their cherished fig tree, the most beautiful tree in the Masai Mara. As they approach, enthusiasm overcomes discipline as everyone looks for a shortcut to cross the cliffs dug out by the last flood. And everyone seems to manage. Well, almost everyone. They have to move fast because night's falling. In a year, the fig tree has had time to produce more fruit, much to Mollis's delight. He's the first to arrive, but the others won't be long in turning up. And so, all is well, for the time being.
The Amazon jungle, one of the world's richest natural environments. This ecosystem is itself a sort of giant organism made up of numerous layers, from the dense forest canopy right down to the waterlogged soil. An enormous variety of plant and animal species are found here and nowhere else on Earth. Many of them haven't even been discovered yet. The calm mountain forest in French Guiana is bursting with life. Forest neighbors fear and fight one another, avoid or ignore other species, are born and die every instant. It's a green hell for some, a plant paradise for others, but a place where all take part in the daily struggle for survival. Relationships are constantly shifting as species prey and are preyed upon in the time-honored law of the jungle. But here, like in the savannah, there is one species which has nothing to fear. The jaguar is king of the Amazon forest and the most noble of the continent's big cats. However, this feline shares his domain with another species, perhaps even more fearsome, the Eciton ants. On the ground, at the foot of a giant tree, the Eciton army is on campaign. These thousands of ants are all sisters, daughters of the same mother, their queen. The army's sole task is to find prey and kill it, as these soldier ants have nearly 1 million mouths to feed. The Eciton have a tried and tested battle tactic, the steamroller strategy. A great battalion spreads out along a front line stretching some 20 meters, and the successive lines of soldiers catch small animals by surprise. It's certain death for those that can't move quickly or don't have a solid shell. The Eciton react instantly to tactile stimulation, so the more the victim struggles, the more the ant's instinctive aggression is excited, which draws new attackers. There are few insects that manage to escape the ant's grasp once attacked. Like many insects, ants' behavior is inborn, determined by genetic programming. However, mammals are different. This young jaguar is nearly 2 months old, but it still lives by its mother's side, as it must be taught everything before it's able to fend for itself. As yet, the young cub has not learned how to hunt, but for the other forest dwellers, it still represents a potential threat. The mere smell of these big cats is enough to send a sloth up into the safety of the trees. And very quickly, as the mother jaguar has just sensed the sloth's presence. The cub is curious about everything that moves and still oblivious to the dangers of the forest. In a hostile environment such as this, the young jaguar needs the close presence of its mother if it's to survive. But it will still make many mistakes before it learns what to look out for. Ants have no need of education, as right from the start they are programmed to carry out daily tasks in a routine that hardly ever varies. Mornings are devoted to hunting, and bit by bit the spoils are carried back to the nest. For the colony to function efficiently, these warriors must work cooperatively, and although they're sisters, they're not all the same size. The small ants have cutting mandibles, and the larger ants pointed ones. These distinctions mean each ant has a particular role in the capture and transport of prey. By afternoon, the Essiton have begun heading back to the nest. They're nomadic ants and will soon be starting their daily move. Although insects have nothing more to fear now from the soldier ants, there are other dangers which await them. Fortunately for the Callichroma, it's equipped with a very tough shell, which discourages the nephile. Under the tree canopy, towards the end of the afternoon, the forest seems calm. But in fact, it's a hive of activity, because the Essiton are on the move. The jaguar cub has awoken from its siesta. Sniffing around its territory, it discovers a miniature army which has divided its playground in two. The parade seems never-ending. This is a new experience for the cub, which is watched attentively by its mother. While enriching, it's also painful because Essiton ants carry a sting and powerful venom, which they use freely, but especially should their egg nest be challenged. The new generation is the ant's most precious possession after the queen herself. The larvae are fully developed in just under 3 weeks. However, at this tender age, they can't bear the midday heat, which is why the workers wait until late afternoon to begin the move. The egg nest safety depends on the speed and efficiency of the workers. The activity of the whole colony is directed towards moving as quickly as possible. To speed the egg's transport, hundreds of ants make bridges, stairs, and gangways out of their own bodies. These ants are capable of moving in spurts of up to 1 kilometer an hour, the equivalent of 150 kilometers an hour for man. It's vital they find a new bivouac site before nightfall. There are other species which prefer to wait for the night to go into action. The Callichroma is not a nocturnal species, but these others are off in search of food. Although darkness gives them cover, it's still a dangerous mission, and each insect has its own particular protection. The most attractive-looking prey often has the most dissuasive weapons. This caterpillar secretes a liquid distasteful to the praying mantis. The caterpillar is safe, and the mantis will have to find another, less offensive victim. More ant colonies have appeared and are marching through the forest undergrowth. But it's a different species, which has come to stalk the Amazon nights. Certain animals, like this toad and grasshopper, spend the day hiding under camouflage. By night, they dare to reveal themselves. It may seem surprising, but ants are active in even greater numbers by night than by day. These monster ants, the Periponera, are 3 centimeters long, and just a couple of their stings are enough to kill a man. The praying mantis is careful not to approach them. The grasshopper doesn't attract the attention of the red ants. They're too busy carrying their strange loads. In fact, they're not soldier ants, but vegetarian atta ants, leaf cutters. The cutter ants are helped by smaller ants, which prevent parasitic flies from laying eggs on the leaves. Atta ants will cut up all sorts of different plant forms. The diversity of their harvest is reflected in the variety of the forest. Unlike the nomadic eciton ants, atta ants are sedentary. They always use the same familiar paths between their feeding grounds and their underground nest. Over the years, they've marked these routes with pheromones, smelly secretions which act as signposts. Using this system of marking, the atta ants have built up a whole network of roads through the heart of the forest. Relative to their size, these ants have the biggest muscle fibers of the whole animal kingdom, and it's their giant muscles that enable them to carry up to 40 times their own weight. The atta's strength is mirrored by their endurance. In just one night, bushes, even entire trees, can be completely defoliated. Once the carrier has reached the entrance to its underground nest, it is relieved by another team of workers and free to set off again. Near the Essiton bivouac, the ants are still not very active. Some are waiting for the first sun rays to warm up, others are drinking the dew. Many insects start their day by washing and cleaning themselves. Each has its own particular routine. While reptiles need the morning sun to kickstart their metabolism. In the tropics, the thermometer climbs quickly, and in just a short while, these cold-blooded creatures are awake and ready for action. Atta City is buried a meter beneath the surface. The ants have all returned to the colony, but not to rest. Even though they've worked throughout the night, the leafcutters are still busy in their underground garden. These ants carry some 10 kilos of leaves back to their nest every night. The plant matter is chopped, chewed, and ground up into a compost, which the ants use to grow mushrooms. It's the mushrooms which serve as a food source for the larvae and worker ants. The young are raised in the production sites, with 100 or so chambers scattered throughout the underground city. The workers gather small bundles of fungal fibers to feed the larvae. Atta ants have different tasks according to their size. The smallest can get into the tiniest corners of the mushroom beds, while the bigger ants act as sentries, keeping watch over the galleries and nest entries. The jaguar cub already knows its way around its territory. It's even familiar with the river. Jaguars are skilled swimmers, and they love water. They're often to be found stalking the forest's many riverbanks. For now, the cub is more interested in playing than eating, and the riverbank provides some interesting encounters. The tortoise doesn't respond to the jaguar's playful advances. The crab is certainly more dynamic, but its defenses are painful. So the stoic tortoise will be victimized again. Play is not a behavior Eciton ants are familiar with. They leave their bivouac every morning to go hunting, and if they come across another ant's nest along the way, they will loot it. These larvae are nourishing and easy to carry. The Eciton don't kill them. Instead, they are stored for several days in case of rain, as the ants are unable to hunt when it's wet. Even the coral snake gets out of the way of the advancing army. Although this snake has the most poisonous venom of all the Amazon forest reptiles, its weapon has little effect on the ants. Instead of escaping, some species try to camouflage themselves. If this tactic is to be successful, the locust must remain completely still. The Callichroma is unable to keep motionless. It shifts its legs and antennae and draws the ant's attention. On the ground, the Eciton soldiers continue their advance. But for now, their presence hasn't stopped the Callichroma from pursuing its goal in life, to find a mate. Perched on a dead balata trunk, the Callichroma is on the lookout for females and not paying the ants much attention. Some are luckier than others, but if the male Callichroma waits long enough, a female may come along. However, competition is fierce, and the ants are dangerously close. There are few species which aren't menaced by the Eciton. However, these birds are watching the ants with interest, in the hope of catching a fleeing insect, or even robbing the Eciton of one of their victims. Other opportunists wait for the camouflage specialists to make a fatal mistake and reveal themselves. That's what this liana snake is up to. The lizard has attracted the serpent's attention by attacking a locust. And the prospect of a meal of locust-stuffed lizard is worth approaching carefully. Opportunity missed. The feast will have to wait. This new raid has lasted nearly 4 hours and resulted in between 1,500 and 2,000 victims. Dissected and mutilated, the insects are carried back to the bivouac by some of the troop, while the army continues its campaign. This grasshopper is experimenting with the camouflage method of defense. The julid, a type of myriapod, is saved by its foul-smelling secretions. But the grasshopper's escape route has landed it right in the path of a cohort on the march, and its struggle has focused the ant's attention. The hunt has come to an abrupt end, and in just a few minutes, the army makes a sharp turn and doubles back on itself. It is no doubt the position of the sun which has sparked the ant's retreat. In the afternoon heat, the prey risks drying out before it can be carried back to the bivouac. And the pheromones, left by each ant as a signpost for the next, disappear in the sun. At the bivouac, several hundreds of thousands of eciton are gathered to protect the queen and the egg nest, which is installed in the heart of the ant's organization. The day's spoils are shared between all the members of the community, workers and larvae alike. The bivouac has been set up at the foot of a giant tree, a perfect site during dry weather. But the dry season is drawing to a close, and a storm is approaching. The eciton must find a new shelter for the larvae, which are now at the last stage in their development, the delicate phase of cocoon weaving. After a quick site inspection, the ants opt for an underground hollow, and the workers begin immediately transferring their egg nest. As the rain begins to pierce the tree canopy, the ants manage to set up a bivouac annex underground, following an energetic mobilization. This is a real nursery, where the larvae can weave their cocoons under the guard of more mature ants. In the tropics, rain showers are often as brief as they are sudden, and the sun is already shining again on the bivouac. The hunters, caught out in the rain, are making their way back to the colony. Meanwhile, underground, most of the larvae have already finished weaving their cocoons. Rain is probably the eciton's worst enemy. If it continues long and hard, it can prevent soldiers out on a raid from returning to their nest. Scent marks are washed away, and the ants can no longer find their bearings. During the rainy season, it's not unusual to see small colonies of eciton ants wandering around the forest floor, looking for their nests. For once, the rain hasn't done too much damage. It served more as an alarm. Most of the colony has gone in search of a new bivouac site, which is better sheltered. In the nursery, a rare event has just taken place. An unusually large ant has just broken out of its cocoon. It's a young queen. This ant gives off certain pheromones which encourage workers to take particular care of her. Although competing eciton queens fight each other, it's not a physical combat like bees. Instead, they use their pheromones to try to draw the most number of followers. But it's already time to move on. The majority of the colony march ahead of the two queens, which are a good distance from one another and barely visible behind their close guard. Sentries keep watch along the length of the route. The right of precedence is respected, and the queen mother marches ahead of her daughter. But these daily migrations have damaged her feet, and she can't move quickly. So the young queen soon catches up with her mother's group. The proximity of the two queens and the intermingling of pheromones confuses the ant escort. The procession stops suddenly in disarray. However, this holdup could put the queens in danger, and angry guards with their mandibles raised swarm all over the immobile queens. The sun is setting, and the ants must move on and set up the next bivouac before nightfall. The young queen has now overtaken her mother and is in front. The enormous bunch of ants splits up as a majority move to join the new queen's procession. An important number of ants now accompany her, swelling the ranks of her train, which is moving increasingly quickly. Any insect which makes the mistake of getting too close to the escort is immediately attacked. Bridges are built and removed along the army's route to speed its passage. It's now too late for the other colony to follow behind. The cohort loyal to the old queen turns back towards yesterday's camp, which is still quite nearby. The Queen Mother's colony has been reduced to a fraction of the size it was. Nature has seen to it that the young princess will assure the continuation of the dynasty. If the old queen has enough strength, she'll spawn a new generation and her colony will be restocked. If she dies, all her workers will die as well. Night or day, whether animals live alone or in colonies, individuals must ensure the survival of their genes if the species is to perpetuate. A single leafcutter queen carries the genes of several million individuals. The worker's priority is to feed the new generation and thereby ensure the queen has a sufficient number of followers to serve and protect her. The Essiton have a new queen, but their genetic programming hasn't altered. No sooner are they awake than they're out hunting. The Essiton are not a threat for the iguana. In fact, the ants do the reptile a service by ridding it of the parasites lodged between its scales. The Essiton squadron has reached the galleries which access the Attas nest. At the entrance, Attas sentries have already been attacked by the first Essiton scouts. Soldiers invade the galleries, but a pheromone emitted by the Attas sentries alerts the rest of the colony. A meter underground, the first mushroom bed has already been attacked. The Essiton are looking for prey to capture, but here they find only fungi and inedible gardening ants. The Atta rely on their giant guards to defend their nest. At first, the Essiton seem to have the upper hand. They outnumber the Atta guards, and they're armed with a sting. The Atta guards have only their mandibles, but they use them like powerful shears to decapitate their assailants, while they themselves are killed by poisonous injections. The complicated organization of the Atta's nest makes it difficult to loot thoroughly. The larvae are scattered throughout 100 or so chambers, of which the Essiton have found only 1 or 2. The Atta guards have put up a determined defense, resulting in meager spoils for the Essiton, a mere dozen nymphs. The Essiton begin their retreat, making their way back to the surface, leaving behind them a tangled mass of dead and dying ants. Outside, most of the army is still engaged in small skirmishes. A large megasoma tries to protect itself by hiding under some leaves. But a hurried escape seems the only way to rid itself of these predatory ants. Meanwhile, what has become of the king of the forest during these miniature battles? Has the young jaguar finally learned to hunt? No, it still seems to be out looking for playmates, and is intent on distracting the attention of a coati who's hunting for food. The jaguar cub really does just want to play. However, its mother, ever watchful, has other ideas. It's through playing and observing its mother that the cub will develop its own hunting instinct. But it's a little too early for this jaguar to live up to its royal reputation. The Essiton colony, with its new queen, is now at the peak of its cycle. This afternoon, a community of nearly 1 million ants is getting ready to move again. The new workers have all hatched out of their cocoons, and from the young queen to the youngest soldier ant, all are sisters in the Essiton task force. A million individual organisms, or one sole unit, the colony. The Essiton are at once ferocious predators and self-sacrificing individuals whose behavior is directed toward the good of the colony and the survival of the species. This tendency is particularly apparent once the bivouac has emptied out and the eciton's complex living structure is revealed. Every eciton ant can become a construction worker. The first ant to come up against an obstacle freezes when it feels the contact of another ant trying to climb the same obstacle. A new wave of arrivals grasp each other's pincers and mandibles and in turn become immobile, forming a bridge of thousands of individuals. When food is plentiful, a generation of winged male eciton hatch. Once they're mature, they leave their colony to fly towards other eciton nests to fertilize the queens. In this way, each colony's genetic stock is renewed and evolves. Even the dangerous soldier ants are capable of transforming into a motionless crowd to form a sort of carpet, providing a dry passage for the rest of the colony to cross without getting wet. Although the eciton appear invincible, red beetles have succeeded in living off of them parasitically. Found throughout the Amazon basin, the beetles imitate the ants' pheromones and tactile contacts, which allows them to steal some of the prey the eciton capture on their raids. Night falls again, and the leafcutter ants are once more out harvesting the forest in French Guiana. They seem unperturbed by the earlier eciton attack. Here in the Amazon, from the novice jaguar cub to the perfectly programmed warrior ants, each individual has its unique place in the ecosystem.
Sometimes wide and peaceful, sometimes narrow and wild, The Nile is a living artery which cuts through half of the African continent. Here it ends a wild run through the high plateau of Central Africa. It must travel 6,000 kilometers before running into the Mediterranean. The Nile often changes names during the course of its voyage. Here in Uganda, it is called Nile Victoria for a brief stretch. Winding tranquilly for several dozen kilometers, it encounters a narrow bottleneck, a necessary point of passage, Murchison Falls. The Nile's entire mass of water must be engulfed through a gorge barely 7 meters wide. Several kilometers down the way, it regains its ease and peaceful rhythm. Beware of still water, goes the proverb. Here, one is wary of what is lying still in these waters. Seldom showing itself, it is feared and respected by all of its neighbors. The Africans call it Master of the River. Crocodilus niloticus, its Latin name, is the largest of its species, measuring 3 to 5 meters in length. The ancestors of the saurians were already present during the golden era of the reptiles and outlived the dinosaurs. 200 million years of evolution with little change. The crocodiles have inherited most of their ancestral characteristics, particularly their invincible bony plating. In Africa, rivers are always sources of conflict. Here the tension began about 3 weeks ago, when the females laid their eggs on the banks. There are about 60 days of incubation left. For the females, this means 60 more days of fasting as they spend their time surveying the nest. In any case, tensions and conflicts do not prevent them from living a long life. With scales blackened with time, this female is over 100 years old. This grande dame shares the bank with a young lass, a 30-year-old female. Contrary to appearances, females do not incubate their eggs. The eggs lay at rest in the cool depths of a hole dug for the purpose, where the temperature stays between 30 and 35 degrees Celsius. Once this task is completed, all that is left to do is wait. Waiting, but always with an eye open. The female must keep watch on her eggs, never slackening her vigilance. It is the only way to protect them from audacious and sly predators. Here is the female crocodile's worst enemy, the Nile monitor, an attentive and efficient predator who swallows up eggs scrupulously and arbitrarily. This tiny Nile monitor of 1.5 meters, distant cousin of the Komodo dragon, is in the habit of waiting for dawn to break into action. This one has just finished its morning sunbathing. A gulp of water, and it will be ready to go hunting. The Nile monitor is patient. It is hot outside, and it knows that the moment will come when the females will slacken their guard, when they return to the water for refreshment. First, a quick scan of the territory to define the perimeters of the search. The Nile monitor is a fine bloodhound with a sensitive nose. During the egg-laying, the female crocodiles deposited odoriferous secretions in the nest so they could easily find the nest again after a refreshing swim. This odor provides a precious clue for the Nile monitor. But beware of informants. These armed lapwings have a contract with the masters of the river. In exchange for the right to nest on the banks and the protection of the crocodiles, they keep watch on the eggs and sound cries of alarm upon the arrival of an intruder. The kingfishers take their role of lookout so seriously that they take turns nosediving at the Nile monitor to peck him with their beaks. These repeated aggressions are surely exasperating, but not dissuasive enough. The Nile monitor continues its search. Only the arrival of a crocodile could make this enemy scatter. Eyes and nostrils protruding on the surface of the water, a low profile. Discretion, the other strong point of the crocodile. No one ever sees it approaching. 2 pairs of nostrils are better than 1 when it comes to finding eggs on such a vast beach. Continuing their search, the 2 Nile monitors gather and devour all the carcasses they find along the way, not suspecting a thing. One of the intruders had a little fright. This does not stop it from hastening to the site. The surprise was enormous for the second intruder. In 3 strides, the female crocodile hoisted her 900 kilograms up onto the bank. But the Nile monitor is a quick creature. Sure of its own agility, it refuses to scatter. Once it is on the scent of eggs, the Nile monitor is not one to renounce. The eggs are quite close by, buried somewhere, but where? A few old shells are strewn about, making it all the more exciting. The centenarian female has returned to her watch. She does not make the least effort to chase away this insolent creature, knowing that her presence alone is enough to dissuade it. The Nile monitor decides to be reasonable. It will not find any crocodile eggs today. Might as well return to the forest and steal eggs from bird nests. It is generally believed that crocodiles adore laying lazily in the sun. In fact, as with all cold-blooded animals, they need an external heat source to raise their body temperature, which must be maintained at 26 degrees Celsius. This requires constantly alternating between sunbathing and refreshing swims. When the heat becomes too intense and nobody feels like moving, all they need do is open their mouths to cool off. The exposure of mucous membranes to the sun facilitates the cooling process through evaporation. The spur-winged plover also have an agreement with the crocodiles. As they groom and bathe, they survey the surroundings. It's quite an art being a reptile. Because of their thermoregulation system, they must regularly alternate between heat from the sun and cool of the water. Each must find the proper dose. This rolling thunder announces a crucial event for all of the inhabitants of the river and its banks, the rainy season. It is the beginning of April, and torrents of water will fall for several weeks in this equatorial region of Africa. The Nile widens at a phenomenal rate. One morning, everything subsides. The water stops as quickly as it came, leaving fish stranded in tiny ponds of water. Fishing has never been this easy for the tufted heron and the Egyptian geese. The kingfisher is also delightfully surprised. Even those enormous fish, the perch of the Nile, were caught by the surprise of the sudden subsidence. This particular one, stranded on a sandbar, arouses much greed, especially among the famished female crocodiles still waiting for their eggs to hatch. They are tempted to swim a few strokes in search of this carcass. But is it wise to desert the nest for such small gain? In any case, hunger is making them nervous. The tension rises. Hierarchy is an essential part of crocodile social life, and it exists as much among the males as among the females. In order to avoid mortal combat, they settle conflict using body language with postures of submission and intimidation. In this way, the young female needs only lift her head slightly to express her resignation, giving priority to her senior. The crocodiles of the Nile are very fond of the perch, which can weigh up to 60 kilograms. They represent 80% of their food, but they are capable of capturing and eating just about anything from a frog to an antelope or even a buffalo. Only the hippopotamus escapes their powerful fangs. The other female refuses to be left behind. She too has just spotted a dead fish. One fish, even 2 or 3, seems a bit meager for such a mastodon. But the digestive system of the crocodile allows it to assimilate 60% of the energy contained in its nutriments. Consuming a minimum of energy to maintain the desired body temperature, its caloric reserves go a long way. The 2 females were not wise in deserting their nests. The Nile monitor has returned, only this time it has decided not to leave empty-handed. The Nile monitor is burning hot. Just a few more steps and a bit of digging will suffice to take the eggs from their nest. To the dismay of lookouts on the riverbank, it has achieved its goal and will shortly begin to feast. The Nile monitor is the only saurian to open its throat wide enough to swallow prey which seem much too large. It is estimated that the Nile monitors are responsible for 50% of the destruction of crocodile eggs. This is no longer mere larceny. It is a veritable carnage. The Nile monitor is capable of devouring an entire clutch of eggs in less than an hour. The lapwings can sing away, but there is no one to chase away the pillager. The female crocodiles are also in the middle of satiating their hunger. Unaware of the events taking place on the bank, they continue to plow the river in search of perch. The odor of the stranded carcass, sitting for several hours, has attracted the attention of another Nile monitor. Above all a scavenger, the Nile monitor can ingurgitate any edible finding. Even so, this one is a little big, and someone else is already eyeing it. Meanwhile, the nest pillager has engulfed almost all of the eggs. The indignation has reached its limit with the lapwings. Their cries of alert have finally been heard. The female returns towards her nest, abandoning all other concerns, but at her own pace. On land, crocodiles have neither the speed nor the agility they are famous for in water. In urgent need, they can gallop at 20 kilometers per hour. But they easily lose their balance and resort to a means of locomotion better adapted to their morphology. The young female, alerted by the cries of the lapwings, is unable to arrive any faster to the site in order to save her clutch of eggs. Luckily, the crocodiles of the Nile are particularly prolific. A female can produce between 60 and 80 eggs per year. The perpetuation of the species is assured, even if only one of the thousands of eggs she lays in her life hatches. In other words, as scandalous as it seems, the pillaging of the Nile monitor is not a real threat to the species. The brawny intervention arrives too late. The young female will not have one single baby this year. Surely the female has not examined her nest very closely. Believing that there are a few eggs left, she begins to camouflage them in case of the return of the Nile monitor. The Nile monitor is so satiated that it is unable to swallow the last crocodile embryo. The hippopotami, having spent the entire night grazing on the banks, return to the river just before dawn. Sun is the only thing they fear. The cohabitation of hippopotami and crocodiles goes rather smoothly, provided that each respect the rules of peaceful coexistence. When conflict arises, the crocodiles use their powerful jaws to instill fear into the hippopotami, who in turn count on their stoutness and corpulence to impress the crocodiles. It never goes any further. Sunrise is always awaited impatiently by the fishing eagle. As soon as the sun begins to shine on the surface of the water, it begins to lie in wait. The centenarian female has just heard the signal of her impending liberation, a call, the cry of the first babies to have reached maturity, still inside their shells, buried 20 to 30 centimeters underneath the sand. She will have to dig, uncover the nest, so that the young can hatch. Evidently, the yelps of the baby crocodiles have attracted one of the Nile monitors who was prowling about the vicinity. She continues to dig, always keeping an eye on this sly intruder, just waiting for the opportunity to seize a hatchling. female will continue to excavate in the sand for more than 4 hours. It is a colossal job given her corpulence. In the end, the Nile monitor does not have the patience to wait any longer. It leaves, certain that sooner or later, one of the young will stray or get stepped on by this 1-ton monster. With incredible gentleness, the mother seizes the firstborn within her jaws, usually lethal on all other occasions. In fact, at the base of each tooth is a pressure detector, permitting the female to moderate her grasp. Under the weight of the hatchlings, her tongue hollows, forming a slight groove which can contain about 20 babies. She will carry them in this way in several batches all the way to the river. The first people to have observed the behavior of crocodiles believed the females devoured their newborns. This could not be further from the truth. Of all the reptiles, the crocodiles are the most attentive towards their young. Once all the young have reached the river, the father and mother will watch over their young for 11 or 12 weeks. The eldest has definitely broken all records. She has put a batch of 30 inside her snout. She now takes them among the water lilies in a safe place she has found. 2 or 3 trips are needed to transport the entire family. Waiting for their turn, the newborns in the nest continue to hatch without much difficulty. Unknowingly, they already prepared their exit from the shell. Throughout the entire incubation period, the embryo plays an active role in its own development. It rejects carbon dioxide, causing a chemical reaction that renders the eggshell porous to oxygen and thus easier to pierce. Unlike birds and mammals, crocodiles do not have gender chromosomes. Therefore, the gender is not determined at fertilization, but rather during the incubation. It is essentially related to the temperature of the nest. Above 31 degrees Celsius, there will only be males. Below, only females. Since all of the eggs are not buried at exactly the same level in the sand, both sexes are always present in a brood. Miniature adults. All elements are present: shape, color, scales, claws. The only difference is in the size. 15 centimeters long after hatching. 15 centimeters of fresh flesh, multiplied by 15 or 20 or 30, seems like a steal for the Nile monitor. The same one is still on the prowl. The newborns are lucky that the Nile monitor has found a dead baby crocodile in its path, most likely crushed by its mother on her way to the river. The female returns for the third and last mouthful of babies. For nearly a century now, this female has returned each year at the same season, to the same place, to accomplish her duties toward her species. With many years of experience, she has perfected her gestures admirably. All of the young are now assembled in a nursery, among the water lilies. As adults, crocodiles are practically invincible, but their youth is not so easy. If one of the young were to leave the nest, it would not last long. Fishing eagles, snakes, Nile monitors, herons would swallow it up in one mouthful. Despite the parents' vigilance, only 3% of the babies will make it to adulthood. A young Nile monitor has just spotted the creche. It has the instinct of a predator, but lacks experience and an awareness of danger. The Nile monitor is as agile in water as it is on land. It swims rapidly and quietly, and can easily escape even the most attentive eye. But this mother crocodile is observing its every move. The mother has missed her target. The young Nile monitor was exceptionally lucky and had quite a fright. It regretfully gives up on this formidable meat safe, too well surveyed. In the river, the seemingly placid hippopotami are also a great danger for baby crocodiles. When they stroll their 3 to 4 tons across the marshes, it is not a good idea to cross their path. When one of these mastodons approaches, finding a refuge becomes a first priority. The baby crocodiles are beginning to gain confidence. They have learned to catch insects and frogs. But there is one thing they have not yet done since they have been in the nursery: touch land, to finally walk on solid ground, to discover the joys of the riverbank, to learn the art of sunbathing. With her young exposed and visible, the mother crocodile must double her vigilance. Mid-May, as we approach the rainy season, the frequency and violence of storms, which hit mostly in the evening, increase. The Nile is not only the longest river on Earth, it is also the most mysterious, with origins that were hidden for a very long time. It took the audacity and tenacity of many explorers, such as the famous Dr. Livingstone, to discover its sources in the heart of Africa. The craze of the sources of the Nile was whispered about for entire generations, becoming a veritable obsession. Finally, in about 1910, it was discovered that it gained its force and power in Burundi, in a place called the Mountains of the Moon, where the name alone makes one dream. The rains have ceased, but upstream of Murchison Falls, they have transformed the ordinarily calm Nile into a furious torrent. Needless to say, these yearly overflowings cause a great deal of devastation. Buffalo, antelope, warthogs, and other animals grazing on the banks were carried away. Drowned animals drift downstream, like this buffalo. For the crocodiles, the rainy season is the season of abundance. Usually contented with fish at other seasons, here they are truly satisfied. They merely sit in the middle of the river, and dozens of carcasses come floating their way. Here they come, rushing from all parts, attracted by the carcasses. But this buffalo is too big. Impossible to dismember it in the water. They will just have to wait for it to run aground. The hippopotami are troubled by the assembly of crocodiles. Tension rises among the troop. On the riverbank, a dominant male reigns on top of a log, approximately 50 meters in length. Beware to anyone who dares to approach. Hippopotami can inflict mortal wounds among themselves with their canines. Generally, these scuffles do not create any victims. The heaviest one always has the last word, period. In order to eat the buffalo that has finally run ashore, they must exercise team effort. Despite the fact that their jaws are able to seize prey with extraordinary force, they are unable to dismember and grind fresh flesh. Crocodiles are obliged to wait for the prey to begin decomposing and work as a group in order to dismember the carcass. The dominant male is responsible for giving the signal for the rush for the spoils. Some keep a firm grasp of the spoils, while others rotate frantically in order to break apart the bones and tear off large pieces which they ingurgitate whole. Why are these powerful beasts unable to chew their prey? Their razor-sharp canines overlap in such a way as to hinder the lateral motion that grinds prey. The crocodiles are thus forced to swallow everything whole. Internal organs, skin, tendons, everything will be swallowed, including the horns. Like birds, they ingurgitate stones from time to time to facilitate their digestion. These stones stay in their stomachs and help to grind up any food that was not chewed in the mouth. Digestive acids will finish the process. Horns, hooves, manes, and tendons will all disappear under their effect. With a medium-sized prey, such as a gazelle or an antelope, the cutting up is easier and can be carried out alone. The crocodile clutches the animal in its snout and shakes it violently until it is completely dismembered. With larger carcasses, group cooperation is indispensable. All parts of the body are used to carry out the dismemberment. Their legs are short but robust and are needed to keep equilibrium. The powerful tail allows the crocodile to multiply the force exerted on the prey. In the Nile, there can be up to 40 or 50 crocodiles on one sole carcass. But the feast does not take place in anarchy. For lack of room, they cannot all tear off parts of the carcass at the same time, so they wait their turns at a distance. This cooperation, carried out calmly and without brawls, demonstrates a certain degree of social organization, which does not exist in other reptile species. It is mistakenly believed that the crocodile prefers spoiled meat to fresh meat. Its stomach being no larger than a basketball, it cannot ingurgitate large quantities of food at one sitting. Having eaten its fill, it is known for hiding pieces of meat under rocks or in caves as if it was hanging game. False. It is simply setting it aside for later. The quantities of protein absorbed during these feasts are stocked as fat within the tail and along the back. This explains why crocodiles can fast for several months. They only eat about 50 meals a year. A large crocodile of the Nile can even go 2 years without food. The end of the feast. Within 2 hours, the buffalo was ripped to shreds like an ordinary rag doll. There is positively nothing left. Three months have gone by, and the rainy season becomes a vague memory with the declining river. On the banks, the dragonflies warm themselves in the sun. They keep high to protect themselves from the increasingly voracious young crocodiles. While some are still attached to the family, others depart in search of adventure. It is not wise to desert the family circle so soon. In the groove of a wave, one can end up face to face with a perch of the Nile. This voracious predator devours an infinite number of young crocodiles. Several weeks later, it's time for an assessment. The numbers do not lie. Of the 80 crocodiles hatched on the bank, only one has survived. In the beginning, it will grow at the phenomenal rate of 30 centimeters per year. If it survives, escaping all the dangers in store, especially humans who hunt for its hide, it will still have to wait about 10 years to reach adulthood and to attack a ruminant. The day will finally come when, on the banks of the Nile, the crocodile will in turn give life and become the superb beast which evokes the armed warrior and the reigning master of the longest river on earth.
Comes back for more.